I'm standing at my family's dinner table, their mouths dropping as I slide my phone across. I'm booked for Alaska, I say, while they're still chattering about their fancy Caribbean cruise they never invited me to. Hi, I'm Talia Kendrick, 27, the reliable daughter who finally said enough. What started as a sting of betrayal turned into a wild journey, my own cruise, a blog blowing up, and a Thanksgiving that flipped everything I knew about family upside down. Want to know how one bold move changed it all? Stick around. I've got a story that might just hit home. Ever been left out by the ones you love? Drop your thoughts below. I'd love to hear them. The drip of my coffee maker was the only sound in my little Raleigh kitchen that February morning in 2024, a cool breeze sneaking through the cracked window as I cradled my mug. I was halfway through my first sip, bitter and strong, just how I like it, when the phone rang and Celine's voice burst through, flipping my quiet day into a tailspin. "Hey, Talia, you doing anything for Mom's birthday next week?" she chirped, bright as a spring cardinal. I leaned against the counter, scrolling emails on my phone, the faint buzz of a neighbor's lawnmower drifting in from outside. It was one of those crisp Carolina mornings where the air felt fresh, promising, and I figured we'd just chat about cake or candles. But Celine, oh, Celine, she always had a way of dropping news like it was nothing, like that time she forgot to mention her big NYU acceptance party until I overheard Mom gushing about it to Aunt June. Not yet, I said, my voice still groggy from sleep. "Why, what's up?" She laughed, light and airy, the kind of laugh that used to make me smile when we were kids. "Oh, just making sure you're around. We're all so excited for the Caribbean cruise next month. Mom, Dad, me. It's going to be amazing." My stomach twisted, a slow, sinking knot I couldn't shake. I set my mug down, the ceramic clinking too loud against the counter. "Wait, what cruise?" I asked, my fingers tightening around the handle until my knuckles paled. There was a pause, then her tone shifted, laced with that fake surprise she's perfected over the years. "Oh, didn't Mom tell you? We've been planning it for weeks. Someone's got to watch Rusty and Luna, though. You know how they are." I could picture her on the other end, twirling a strand of that perfect blonde hair, probably lounging in her yoga pants without a care. The line crackled faintly, and I caught a glimpse of myself in the toaster's reflection. Messy bun, tired eyes, all 27 years of me staring back like a fool. "No," I said, sharper than I meant to. "Mom didn't mention it." Selena giggled again, oblivious or maybe just pretending to be. "Well, you're not busy anyway, right? It's just a week. Mom figured you'd be fine with the dogs." My hands started trembling, coffee sloshing as I poured another cup I didn't need, the bitter steam rising like the heat in my chest. I hung up without a goodbye, the silence settling heavy as I stood there, staring at the cheerwine can on my counter, a dented silver relic of a life they assumed I'd always live. They didn't even think to invite me. Not a word, not a hint, just the same old Talia, reliable Talia, the one who'd drop everything to keep their world spinning. I paced the linoleum floor, my socks scuffing against the worn spots, and thought back to all the times this had happened before. Celine's high school graduation party with a rented tent and a DJ, while my college acceptance to Boston U, full scholarship and all, got a nod and a "that's nice, dear," before Mom swapped my letter on the fridge for Celine's summer dance schedule. I'd worked 3 jobs to get through school, graduated summa cum laude, built a steady marketing career, and what did it get me? A family who saw me as the backup plan, the one who'd mind the store while they sailed off to sip cocktails under palm trees. My eyes drifted to my laptop, still open from last night's work, and I sank into a chair, the wood creaking under me. 3 weeks of vacation time glowed in my inbox, unused, piling up because they figured I didn't go anywhere fun. Fun was for Celine, the golden girl who dropped out of NYU after 2 years to find herself in Europe, funded by Mom and Dad's monthly checks. Me? I was the one who stayed, who showed up, who never said no. Until now, maybe. I tapped my fingers on the table, the rhythm matching the thud of my heart, and let that thought settle in. Selena's words echoed, "You're not busy anyway, right?" stinging like a slap across the face, sharp and cold. I wasn't busy, sure, but I could be. I could be anything I wanted. Outside, a neighbor waved from his porch, a cheerwine can glinting in his hand, and I wondered how many mornings I'd spent like this, sipping coffee, waiting for someone else's life to need me. Sometimes, I muttered to the empty room, you've got to shake the tree to see what falls out. It wasn't much, but it felt true, a quiet promise I hadn't made to myself in years. My gaze flicked back to that dented can, a Carolina classic I'd always loved, and I asked myself, when did I become their backup plan? The question hung there, unanswered, as the coffee cooled and the day stretched out ahead. The glow of my living room lamp cast a warm puddle of light over the couch that night, but it couldn't chase away the chill that settled in my bones after Celine's call. I'd spent the day rattled, replaying her breezy words about the Caribbean cruise, and just as I sank into the cushions, ready to let the crackle of the fireplace soothe me, my phone buzzed again. It was Mom, Ramona Kendrick. All business and no nonsense, her voice slicing through the line like it always did, confirming every fear I'd nursed since morning. "Talia, honey," she started, clipped and efficient. "We need you to watch Rusty and Luna while we're on the cruise. You know how Rusty gets at the kennel. He'll fret himself sick." I pressed the phone harder against my ear, the familiar scent of burning oak wrapping around me as the wind howled outside, rattling the old sassafras trees lining my Raleigh street. It was late February 2024, and beyond my window I could see the faint silhouettes of folks setting up tents for the spring fair. A cheerful hum I suddenly envied. I didn't answer right away, my jaw tightening as I traced the worn edge of the armrest with my thumb. That tone of hers. It was the same one she'd used years back when she'd called to say, "Talia, we're flying to Paris for Celine's study abroad kickoff. Can you skip your graduation party? The dogs need you." No invite then either, just a quick shuffle of priorities that left me holding leashes instead of a diploma frame. "So, a week with the dogs," I said now, my voice flat, testing the waters. "That's all?" She barreled on, oblivious to the edge in my words. "Yes, just feeding times and walks. Luna's easy, but Rusty needs his special kibble twice a day. It's no trouble for you, right?" No trouble. No, how are you? No, want to come along? Just a laundry list of chores like I was still the teenage Talia who'd nod and smile. The fire popped, sending a spark skittering across the hearth, and I clenched my jaw harder, memories bubbling up like steam from a kettle. I could still see Celine's NYU acceptance party. Mom and Dad decked out the backyard with string lights and a catered spread, neighbors toasting her every 5 minutes. My own milestone a year earlier, full scholarship to Boston U, got a pat on the back and a "nice job, dear." My acceptance letter pinned to the fridge for all of 2 days before Celine's dance recital schedule took its place. I'd worked 3 jobs through college, graduated with honors, built a quiet life in marketing, and here I was, still the one they called when the kennel wasn't an option. My eyes stung, not from the smoke, but from the weight of it all, the years of being reliable pressing down until I could hardly breathe. I slid off the couch, the hardwood cool Roscoe creaking under my socks as I crossed to the kitchen table where my laptop sat, still humming from last night's work. Outside, the wind gusted again, carrying the distant clatter of fair tents snapping into place, and I flipped open the screen, my fingers moving almost on their own. Cruise sites loaded up, bright banners promising escape, 7 days to Alaska, glaciers and open skies, departing from Seattle the same day their Caribbean ship would sail from Miami. My heart thudded, a wild rhythm against my ribs as I scrolled through photos of icy waters and rugged peaks. My finger hovered over Book Now, the cursor blinking like a dare. Why not? Why not me for once? I could see it. Standing on that deck, wind in my hair, no leashes, no kibble, just me and a world they'd never thought to offer. Mom's voice cut back in, bright and certain. "Your dad already canceled the kennel, so we're counting on you, okay?" That was it, the final straw, her assumption locking into place like a door slamming shut. I snapped the laptop closed, the sound sharp in the quiet room, my breath coming fast. "I'll think about it," I muttered, barely audible, and hung up before she could reply. Done. Done with their plans, their needs, their version of me. I reopened the laptop, the Alaska page glowing back at me, and sat there, staring at it, the fire's warmth fading against my skin. Talia's Trails. My blog flickered in my mind. 2 years of posts about weekend getaways and hidden diners, all dismissed as a cute little hobby by them. Maybe it was time they saw what I could do when I stopped saying yes. The fair's lights twinkled faintly through the window, a promise of something new, and I let out a slow breath. Folks can lean on you so long they forget you've got your own legs to stand on, I whispered to the empty room, a truth I'd ignored too long. My finger hovered again, the cursor steady now, and I wondered, why not me for once? I stepped through the front door of my parents' house in Raleigh that early March evening in 2024, the smoky tang of Mom's famous BBQ ribs hitting me like a warm hug I wasn't sure I wanted. My boots clicked against the hardwood, and I carried a secret heavier than the platter of meat I knew was waiting in the dining room, a secret that had been simmering inside me since I'd clicked "Book Now" on that Alaska cruise page. The air buzzed with chatter as I rounded the corner, the flicker of candles dancing across the red and white checkered tablecloth, casting shadows that stretched long and thin. A cheerwine can glinted on the sideboard, its silver sheen catching the light, and I paused, smoothing my sweater, my fingers brushing the phone tucked in my pocket. The last time I'd tried speaking up at a family dinner, they'd pivoted to Selene's yoga class chatter before I'd finished my sentence, like my words were just steam off the gravy, there and gone. They were all there, gathered around the table like a scene from some Norman Rockwell painting, gone slightly off-kilter. Mom, Ramona, presided at one end, her apron still dusted with flour, her smile tight as she spooned roasted potatoes onto plates. Dad, Thane, sat opposite, quiet as ever, his graying hair catching the candlelight as he sliced into a rib. Selene lounged across from me, her blonde curls spilling over her shoulder, her laughter bright as she spun tales of the Caribbean cruise they'd planned. Cocktails on deck, steel drums echoing over the waves, sunsets that'd make your heart ache. I slid into my seat, the wood creaking under me, and poured myself a glass of sweet tea, the ice clinking softly. My fingers drummed against my phone, a steady beat matching the pulse in my ears, while their voices swirled around me, a chorus I wasn't part of. Mom leaned over, her smile widening, like she was about to hand me a gift instead of a chore. "Talia, you're set for Rusty and Luna next week, right?" she asked, her tone all sugar and certainty, as if the question was just a formality. The table went quiet for a heartbeat, their eyes flicking to me. Selene's smug, Dad's mild, Mom's expectant. I took a slow sip of tea, the sweetness sharp on my tongue, then set the glass down with a soft thud. "Hold on a sec," I said, my voice steady as I fished my phone from my pocket. I tapped the screen, the Alaska cruise itinerary glowing bright, dates, ports, a ship slicing through icy waters, and slid it across the table, the checkered cloth bunching under my hand. "Actually, I'm booked for Alaska," I said, lifting my chin to meet their stares, one by one. The room froze, a snapshot of shock I'd replay later with a grin. Mom's fork clattered onto her plate, a sharp ping against the china, her mouth opening like a fish out of water. Selene snorted, a quick, disbelieving huff. "You're joking!" Her curls bouncing as she shook her head. Dad just stared, his BBQ rib dangling midair, sauce dripping onto his napkin, his brow furrowing like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I let the silence stretch, thick as Mom's gravy, and pushed my chair back, the scrape loud in the stillness. "Find someone else for the dogs," I said, standing tall, my hands steady at my sides. "I'm done being your fallback." My words hung there, heavy and final, cutting through years of their assumptions like a knife through tender meat. Selene's smirk faltered, her eyes darting to Mom, then back to me, searching for a crack in my resolve. Mom's hand fluttered to her chest, her voice rising in a sputter. "Talia, the kennel's full. What are we supposed to do?" she demanded, as if I'd toppled her whole world with one sentence. Dad set his rib down, slow and deliberate, his gaze shifting between us, a quiet surprise settling in the lines of his face. I shrugged, already reaching for my coat on the hook by the door, the wool rough under my fingers. "I texted you Mrs. Nadine's number earlier," I said, my tone even, my rebellion locked and loaded days ago when I'd lined up the neighbor to take the dogs. "She's got it covered." The air felt charged, like the moment before a Carolina thunderstorm, and I turned toward the hall, the scent of BBQ fading behind me. "You build a life carrying others," I murmured to myself, barely a whisper. "But there comes a day you've got to set the load down and walk free." It was a truth I'd carried too long, and as I grabbed my coat, Mom's voice trailed after me. "Talia, wait!" mingled with the sputter of, "The kennel's full." I kept moving, the door ahead promising cool night air, and wondered, will they ever get it? The moment my boots hit the deck of the Alaska cruise ship that mid-March day in 2024, a weight lifted off me, light as the salty breeze whipping across the Puget Sound. I'd left Raleigh behind, left Mom's sputtered protests and the echo of, "The kennel's full," ringing in my ears, and stepped into something new, something mine. The air bit crisp and clean as we pulled away from Seattle, the faint rumble of the engines humming beneath my feet, promising glaciers and open skies ahead. I tugged my scarf tighter, my breath fogging in the chill, and leaned against the railing, the horizon stretching endless in blue. Mom's guilt trips had always been heavier than Rusty's overstuffed diet bags, piling up over years of, "Talia, we need you." But this time, she'd have to figure it out without me. I was done hauling that load. I wandered the deck, my camera slung over my shoulder, its familiar weight a comfort as I snapped shots of the sea, waves curling white against the hull, gulls wheeling overhead. My phone buzzed in my pocket and I fished it out, Mom's name flashing on the screen. "Rusty's a wreck without you," her text wailed, all caps and exclamation points, like she could tug me back through sheer force of will. I swiped it away with a flick of my thumb, my shoulders loosening as the message vanished, and turned back to the view. Before boarding, I'd lined up Mrs. Nadine Holloway, our neighbor down the hall, to watch Rusty and Luna. She'd agreed for a small fee. Her calm, "I've got this," balmed my nerves. Mom's next text popped up an hour later. "I canceled the Caribbean trip. I can't trust a stranger with Rusty's quirks." I stifled a laugh, picturing her pacing our Raleigh kitchen, her panic almost comical against the vastness of this ship. Inside my cabin, the scent of polished wood and fresh linens welcomed me as I dumped my bag on the bunk. I'd barely settled when my phone pinged again, this time Dad. "Mom's a mess," his message read, short and steady like always, "but I'm home with Nadine and the dogs. Have fun in Alaska." I traced the cold metal railing with my finger, a grin tugging at my lips. Dad, Thane Kendrick, had never been one for big words, but that "have fun" landed warm and new, a quiet cheer I hadn't heard from him before. I tapped out a quick, "Thanks, Dad," then headed back to the deck, the sea air sharp in my lungs. I lifted my camera again, framing a distant whale tail slicing through icy water, and posted it to Talia's Trails, my blog, my corner of the world they'd always brushed off as a hobby. Within minutes, likes poured in, more than I'd ever seen, each one a little nod that said I wasn't just their reliable daughter anymore. I was me, Talia Kendrick, carving my own path. The ship's dining room called me later, a cozy nook with wide windows and the rich, steaming aroma of salmon chowder. A far cry from Raleigh's BBQ, and I savored every spoonful, scribbling a note for my followers. "This beats ribs any day." I leaned back in my chair, the hum of conversation around me blending with the creak of the ship, and let the moment sink in. My phone stayed quiet for a stretch, the silence golden until night fell and I wrapped myself in a blanket under a sky full of stars. The cocoa in my mug warmed my hands, its sweetness grounding me, when a voicemail alert broke the peace. Celine's voice sharp and edged. "You happy now?" she snapped, the words cutting through the stillness, and I paused, mug halfway to my lips. What was brewing back home? I set the mug down, the stars above vast and untroubled, and wondered how long it'd take them to see I wasn't coming back to the old script. The sea rocked gently beneath me, a rhythm I could feel in my bones, and I pulled the blanket tighter, the chill nipping at my nose. "You can't carry everyone forever," I murmured to the night, my breath a faint cloud, and sometimes letting go is the kindest thing you can do, for them and for you. It was a lesson I'd stumbled into, raw and real, and as I sipped my cocoa, the stars seemed to wink in agreement. Selena's words lingered, a thread tugging me back, but the ship sailed on, steady and sure, and I let myself drift with it, free, at last. The fog hung thick over the Alaska cruise ship's deck that late March morning in 2024, curling around the railings like a soft gray scarf as I stood there, bundled in my parka, the cold nipping at my nose. Halfway through this journey, I was fiddling with glacier photos on my phone, the onboard cafe's coffee scent drifting over, when a notification pinged. Dad's name on my blog, Talia's Trails. I tapped it, expecting some fumbled typo. He'd once emailed me a cornbread recipe instead of commenting. But there it was, clear as day. "Beautiful, Talia. Proud of you." My breath caught, my throat tightening as I blinked at the screen, the words glowing against the misty backdrop. Thane Kendrick, my quiet, tech-clumsy dad, had never said that about my work, not once in 27 years, and now here he was, cheering me on from halfway across the country. I slung my camera over my shoulder, its strap a steady anchor, and let that sink in, the fog muffling the world beyond the ship. I was still staring, my fingers hovering over a reply, when my phone rang, Selene's name flashing bright. I answered, bracing for her usual edge, and her voice came through, sharp but off-kilter. "Mom's holed up in some hotel, totally freaking out about the dogs," she said, a huff in her tone. "But, okay, your blog's pretty cool. My yoga girls are hooked." I nearly dropped my camera, the strap slipping as I fumbled to catch it, my heart doing a little flip. Selene, my golden sister who'd never shared a spotlight, had posted my latest entry online, a whale tail shot from yesterday, and her class was buzzing about it. "They're asking where you find these places," she added, almost grudgingly, and I could picture her in Raleigh, pacing in leggings, her curls bouncing. I straightened up, the deck creaking under my boots, and let a grin tug at my lips. Selene boosting me was a first, and it felt like a crack in the wall they'd built around me. Breakfast in the dining room came next, the clatter of plates mingling with the hum of passengers as I slid into a seat by the window, coffee cup warm in my hands. I'd barely sipped when a gray-haired couple leaned over, their faces lit up. "Saw your blog. Booked that whale tour because of you," the woman said, her spoon hovering over oatmeal. Another voice chimed in from across the table, a guy in a flannel cap grinning. "Your tips are gold, kid." I sat taller, the steam from my mug curling up, and nodded, my chest swelling with something new. Pride, maybe, or just the quiet thrill of being seen. For years, I'd been the shadow in our family, the one they leaned on but never looked at. And now here I was, steering strangers' adventures with a few photos and words. The coffee tasted richer somehow, its warmth seeping into me, and I let myself bask in it, the fog outside softening the edges of the world. Later, as the ship docked for a shore day, my phone buzzed again, a text from Dad this time, with a photo attached. I opened it, and there he was grinning beside Mrs. Nadine Holloway, Rusty and Luna sprawled between them, tails wagging like metronomes. Mom was nowhere in the frame, her absence a loud silence, but it didn't sting like I thought it would. I tucked the phone away, my boots crunching on the pier as I headed for a crab shack on shore and sat down to a plate of Alaskan king crab legs, juice dripping down my chin, a messy triumph I snapped for the blog. I wiped my hands, the salty tang lingering, and felt it settle in. I was enough as I am, not their fallback, not their shadow, just me, Talia, standing tall on my own shore. The fog lifted slightly, sunlight glinting off the water, and I let out a slow breath, savoring the freedom of it. Back on the ship, I was stashing my camera when another buzz broke the quiet. Mom's name on the screen. "We need to talk when you're back," her text read, curt and loaded, and I paused, my parka rustling as I shifted. What was she planning now? I set the phone down, the deck steady beneath me, and glanced out at the horizon. Calm, vast, unbothered. "Sometimes folks don't see you until you step out of their shade," I murmured. The words soft against the hum of the engines, a truth I'd earned mile by mile. The coffee's warmth lingered in my hands, and I wondered what waited back home. But for now, I was here, whole, and that was plenty. The screen door creaked as I stepped into my parents' Raleigh house that November evening in 2024, the aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie wrapping around me like a familiar quilt. I'd braced myself for Mom's "we need to talk" text from back in March, expecting a lecture or a guilt trip. But as I crossed into the dining room, my boots scuffing the hardwood, I stopped short. The table looked like a spread from my blog, Talia's Trails. Place cards with my logo, nestled between flickering candles, my Alaska photos framed and hung on the walls, their icy blues catching the light. Last Thanksgiving, Mom had barely glanced at my Montreal trip shots, her eyes glazing over as Celine chattered about yoga. But now here they were, my moments pinned up like trophies, and I stood there, my scarf still looped around my neck, feeling the cautious hope I'd carried from the cruise flicker to life. They were all there, gathered like a scene I'd half forgotten how to fit into. Mom, Ramona, fussed at the head of the table, her apron traded for a sweater, her hands smoothing the red tablecloth as she shot me a tentative look. Dad Thane sat across from her, his flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves, his grin easy and warm as he carved the bird. Celine lounged beside me, her curls tamed into a loose braid, her usual sharpness softened into something playful as she sipped cider. The room buzzed with the hum of a holiday market outside, early Christmas lights twinkling through the window, replacing the spring fair's clamor. And I slid into my seat, the chair creaking under me, the air thick with more than just dinner smells. Mom's place cards glinted, a quiet nod to my world, and I traced one with my finger, the logo swoop a bridge I hadn't expected. Dinner rolled out smooth as gravy, the clink of forks against plates punctuating their chatter. Dad set down the carving knife and pulled a folder from beside his chair, sliding it my way with a wink. "We're thinking a family cruise next year, Italy's coast," he said, his voice steady, warm. "You plan it, Talia." I blinked, my fork pausing over a mound of stuffing, and Celine leaned in, her smirk gentler than I'd ever seen. "Your fans will love it," she added, her cider glass catching the candlelight, and I caught a flicker of pride in her eyes. New, unguarded. I leaned back, the folder cool under my palm, and let that sink in. They weren't just asking me along. They were handing me the reins. Mom cleared her throat, her hands fidgeting, then slid a small frame across the table. Rusty, captured in a shot I'd taken years ago, his ears perked against a Carolina sunset. "I didn't see you before," she said, her voice low, almost swallowed by the room. "I'm trying now." It wasn't a full apology, but it was hers, raw and real, and I nodded, the knot in my chest loosening like a breath held too long. The laughter came then, soft at first, spilling out as I grinned and said, "Italy sounds great, but I'm in charge this time." It rolled around the table. Dad's deep chuckle, Celine's bright giggle, even Mom's hesitant smile cracking into something genuine. And it felt like a thread stitching us back together, not perfect, but whole. I took the carving knife when Dad offered, my hands steady as I sliced into the turkey, the meat yielding under the blade. Celine leaned close, her whisper brushing my ear. "Think they'll stick to it?" I glanced at her, then at Mom fussing with the pie, Dad scooping his lumpy mashed potatoes, flawed as ever, but mine, and realized we'd find out together. I dug into those potatoes, the taste of home settling warm on my tongue, and knew I wasn't just their reliable Talia anymore. I was part of this, flaws and all, my place carved out at last. The market's hum faded as we ate, the twinkling lights outside a quiet promise of what might come. Families bend and stretch, I murmured to myself, fork resting on my plate, but the best ones learn to make room for everyone. It was a truth I'd sailed to find, and as I looked around, at Mom's effort, Dad's warmth, Celine's softened edges, I felt it root deep. The turkey dwindled, the pie waited, and I leaned back, full in more ways than one, ready to see where this new chapter took us. As I savored that Thanksgiving pie, the glow of family around me felt like a quiet victory, a journey from being unseen to finding my place at the table. It taught me that love in a family isn't always loud or perfect. Sometimes it's the small gestures, like a framed photo or a shared laugh, that show we're learning to see each other anew. In this life, if we take time to listen, we might just find the bridges we thought were gone. I'd love to hear your stories. How has your family grown through the years? Share a thought below if this resonates with you.